English 232. We are entering into week 3, and we're going to be looking at the modern period. We'll be looking at the modern period of American literature for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So we'll look at this period and we'll focus on 2 main movements within the modern period, and I'll talk to you guys just a little bit about the modern period today in your lecture, so you get some kind of background about the literary period. Okay, so your modern period is coming out of that realism period, so we're coming into the beginning of the 20th century, or the turn of the 20th century. Okay, so it's starting right there at the beginning of the 20th century, which is the 1900s. Sometimes that's confusing, but so we're looking right at the beginning of the 1900s, and it goes until about mid-century, so about 1950, but a lot of your major examples and the examples that we're going to be looking at are in that first quarter of the century. So we're not spending a lot of time, currently, we're not spending a lot of time on the literature that's happening like during the World Wars, but we are going to, later in the semester, look at the effects of the war on literature, the wars on literature. So for the modern age, we're just looking at the first 50 years of the 20th century, okay? And so when you first have, there's a big shift within those 50 years, okay? Because in the early 1900s, you have the United States as this very powerful, very wealthy, almost isolationist type of a country, like not really intervening in a whole lot, but also very strong in the world. And of course that changes when the United States starts to intervene in the world wars, and is, obviously a deciding factor in both. The 2 main things that we're going to look at for the modern period happen around the same time, but they're vastly different movements, and that's why we're looking at the 2 of them. So we're going to look at the Roaring Twenties, and we're going to look at the Harlem Renaissance, both of which are influenced by the Jazz Age in different ways. Okay, so kind of looking at the Roaring Twenties through the lens of the white experience in America, and then the Harlem Renaissance through the lens of the black experience in America. Once again, just illustrating the differences between the 2. So the purpose of literature in the modern period was for authors to show what was going on in modern life. It was real, okay? So what were they experiencing, and trying to show that in a legitimate way. Because of what they went through during that time, you're entering on the cusp of the Great Depression, and into world wars and things of that nature. The major themes that you're looking at are things like confusion, isolation, and disillusionment. So those are your 3 major themes from this period. And disillusionment is like the one you see in almost all of the works. And you see it in Gatsby, and you'll see it in the Harlem Renaissance as well. So, kind of look for those themes. But also you see confusion, and you definitely see that isolationist type of thing, which is what the U.S. was trying to do, and of course then changed. The loss of the American dream is another huge theme that we will look at. And again, remember, we look at this American dream throughout our semester. So for our first paper, we're looking to define it. And you'll be working on the first paper after you do both the Roaring Twenties and the Harlem Renaissance. Then you're going to write your first paper. And you're looking at how can you define the American dream based on the literature that we've looked at. And then also the attempt to reclaim it, which will probably be more looking at your second paper, because then we're going to analyze the American dream. Is it still even attainable? But back to our period, modern period, your major authors, which of course are a bunch of white guys, are F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, William Faulkner, T.S. Eliot, okay? These guys are known as the Lost Generation. of writers, and we are going to read Fitzgerald for the purposes of this course. So we're going to look at The Great Gatsby, and we have 2 weeks to read this short novel, and it is a short novel, but you do have 2 weeks to read it, so make sure you're staying on top of the reading. So this week you want to, before you start reading the text, you want to go ahead and watch the video about the Roaring Twenties, and you can look at the link to the article, What Happens to the American Dream in a Recession, and then of course we're reading chapters 1 through 4 of The Great Gatsby. So the only assignment that you have due this week is your journal entry, asking you about chapters 1 through 4 of The Great Gatsby. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up both weeks in case you want to read ahead or anything like that. You can see what's coming up. That forum will be available for you to post questions in. So in next week's assignments, you'll see a discussion forum that's just got questions about the text. And what that means is you use that forum if you have a question, and you ask it there, and it's up to you guys to respond to each other, and it's essentially a place for discussion of the novel. It's not a grade. You're not required to participate in it, but it will help deepen your understanding if you do. So I highly encourage you to do so. So starting here on September 9th, you'll see the 9th through the 15th open, and you'll also see the 16th through the 22nd open. Now, make sure that you don't participate in the graded forum until you have finished the novel, okay? So that's super important. If you guys have any questions, make sure you shoot me an email and I will be happy to address them. And I do hope you guys enjoy reading The Great Gatsby. Check in with you probably in 2 weeks, on the week of the 23rd. Happy reading.